What's going on, everyone? Welcome into the latest episode of the Going Long podcast. My name is Zachary Neel. My esteemed co-host over there is Jonathan Stewart. Jay Stu, what's up, man? How you doing on this Tuesday afternoon?
Fantastic. Weather is it's changing over here. The spring
Really?
is right around the corner. Starting to
Lucky
heat up a
you.
little bit. The dormant grass that is yellow here in the south is starting to turn green. So I love it.
I cannot say the same over here. We've had nothing but rain and even some snow mixed in over the last few days. It's like, come on. This
Snow.
is yeah, we're getting
Jeez.
snow in Eugene. It's not sticking, which is even worse because it's like that rain snow mix and it's just 30 degrees and raining. Yeah, it really sucks over here.
Yeah, I got to be careful for that black ice at night in the morning.
Yes, we really do. We've got a really fun show for you today. We're going to bring on famous Oregon Duck, famous Carolina Panther, notable NFL analyst Geoff Schwartz. He's going to come on and break down the NFL Combine with us and talk about some of the Ducks in the NFL draft class. I always knew that you guys were close. Obviously, you guys were teammates at Oregon, but I didn't realize until doing a bit of research for this podcast that it went beyond that. I mean, you guys were both drafted by the Panthers in '08. You played a couple of
Hmm.
years together in the NFL, right?
Yeah, man. Shorty is the biggest person I've ever been around.
He's a big
um,
guy.
Big guy, good heart, and just everything that he puts his mind to. He works so hard at it. So always good to have people like that around you.
So, where does Jeff rank among the former teammates that you keep in touch with the most still?
Um, you know, Definitely top 10.
Okay.
And I think we're obviously in a phase of life where I think as a retired athlete, you go through a phase of, okay, where am I? Who am I? I need to reinvent myself, I guess.
Mhm.
So there's a spell of time there where you kind of you might not keep up with who's in the league as much or who's retired, and so you got to give yourself some time. And I think COVID obviously throw that into the mix. It kind of extends um, the time apart. But I think right now, like I'm in a season of reconnecting. It was good to go back to Oregon for signing day and
Mhm.
see people like Jeremiah Johnson, who was my roommate in college, my road dog. Like, I mean, it was just good to catch up with him, Ed Dixon, just guys that I came into Oregon with. At the end of the day, we're brothers. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying. So football is special in that way because when you're in that locker room, it's practices, you
Mhm.
know, strength and conditioning, training table, games, road games, hotels, meetings. There's a lot of history there to be had and to be remembered,
Mhm.
um, and it's things that we cherish, for the rest of our lives.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I'm glad that we get to have Jeff on. I had him on once last year at some point to talk Oregon football, and obviously when you come on as the co-host, we had our list of former Oregon Ducks and former teammates of yours that we want on, and Jeff was at or near the top of that list. So I'm glad we get to have him on.
yeah.
Before we get to that, there are just some small pieces of news that I want to talk to you about. Appetizers of sorts, if Jeff is the main on course. So, starting with Bo Nix, we're gonna dive a bit deeper into his combine performance with Jeff, but it feels like the reviews from his performance over the weekend are average. It didn't seem like he really blew anyone away. Not to say that he played poorly at all or performed poorly. Is that kind of the sense that you got after the weekend?
I mean, I think my overall, perception, especially going through the combine experience, playing in the league, understanding how the front office works a little bit more, especially now that I'm retired,
Hmm.
understanding kind of, you know, like watching the combine, watching college games, looking at, guys coming into, the transitional aspect of their careers. I see the combine as like opportunity for coaches and organizations to understand how the player is as a person,
Mm-hmm.
more so than the tangibles of what's he going to run the 40, what's his vertical, and
Mm-hmm.
how much he's going to bench on the bench press. For the most part, these scouts and coaches, they know what they're looking at. They already know who these guys are. They already know if these guys can play or not. So it's not much of I'm not looking at the combine and saying, oh, this guy ran a 4.22 and
Mm-hmm.
he's the best player in the draft now.
Yeah.
Like, you'll be a fool if you thought that way. Now speed is very valuable at this next level, right? So obviously for certain positions it means a lot, but I would say, for the offensive line, position, I'm not necessarily looking at the 40 as something that's going to determine whether or not I'm taking a guy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at more so like how's his footwork in these drills. How,
Mm-hmm.
like, just cut to and not to really make a statement, but more so to you know tell me what I already know.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm
Kind of
saying? So
confirm that, yeah.
yeah, looking for some confirmation on certain details, like, is he flat footed? Is
Mm-hmm.
he not flat footed? Does he have good hips? Can he? Because, I mean, at the end of the day, if you can't dance, you can't play. If you can't, and when I say dance, I'm talking about these hips.
Uh-huh.
If you can't move side to side, you can't be out there. and
So
and
so are
that's
you
and that,
saying that you're a pretty good dancer?
yeah, I'm a pretty good dancer. You know what I'm saying? I
What about
think
Jeff? What are Jeff's moves like?
Jeff can dance. You've seen
Okay.
him. We'll talk about Jeff. His one carry in college football history as
I
an
can't
Oregon
wait.
Duck. But yeah, Jeff can dance. He's as big as a guy is like him, and there's multiple guys in this draft coming up that
Mhm.
are large,
Mhm.
um, and they can move.
Yeah.
We talk about uh, Jackson Powers Johnson. You
Mhm.
know,
Big kid.
big kid can move.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I think, you know, I mean, I know we're going to talk about it later, but, a guy like him, his draft stock goes up just by coaches talking to him.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? His personality
Mhm.
just like stands out amongst everyone in the room. And when
Mhm.
you talk about, a guy that's potentially going to be playing center or guard, and he's going to be in a position of leadership within a team, especially at center. You have a quarterback and you have your center. Those
Mhm.
are your leaders. Having a guy that has charisma and understands the game, smart. I mean, this guy sings gospel music, right?
Mhm.
So I read somewhere that he sings gospel music. He's in the gospel choir at the University of Oregon. So
Uh-huh.
he has the personality that you would want at that position. So
Mhm.
it's kind of cool seeing those types of stories come out and develop.
Well, and going back to that experience you're talking about, I was listening to the Sims Complete podcast with Phil and Matt Sims, part of the Believe Podcast Network. They brought up a really good point about Bo Nix. They said, I forget which one it was. They said, he just knows how to play. And that feels like one of the things that kind of gets overlooked during the combine process because, like you said, you're looking at the measurements, you're looking at the 40s, you're looking at how he can throw. It feels like, that experience that he brings. I mean, he has more starts than anyone in the history of college football. Like
Yeah,
that's not nothing. So he
yeah.
knows when to check down. He knows when to throw it away. He knows when to take a sack. You can't measure that at the combine. So that's one of the things that it's not surprising that we're leaving the combine and the narrative is, oh, look at Joe Milton's arm, look at JJ McCarthy, he threw really well, and those are impressive. It was cool to see them do that, but I'm not at all shocked that the narrative is not, oh wow, look at what Bo Nix did, because his intangibles, what he brings to the table, are not the arm strength. They're his mind and the fact that he's another signal caller out there on the field and another extension of the coaching staff.
Yeah, man. I think at the end of the day, too, like, this is a draft class that's not everyone's hyping up, the quarterbacks because you got to
Hmm.
do that. That's
Hmm.
what drives the business, right?
Hmm.
Quarterback play. I'm not completely sold on Penix. I'm not
Yeah,
completely sold on what's the other guy?
Caleb Williams,
Caleb
Drake May.
Williams. Drake May is the only one that I'm like, hey, if you're gonna take a chance, that's your guy.
See, that's your Carolina bias, though. I
It's
think you're
not.
I
It's
think
really
if Penix was in Carolina and Drake May
no,
was in Washington, you would just be like, "Oh, hey, Penix."
no. That's not like I honestly think as far as we're talking about a draft, right? I think
Uh-huh.
when you are going into the NFL draft as an organization, you're thinking to yourself, who can I develop?
Mhm.
I don't care if you're first round or sixth round, seventh round, whatever. Like, who can I develop to reach a maximum potential that is bigger and larger than any player? You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying? And so I look at Drake May, take him in the first round. Yeah, he should be a starter if he's taken early in the first round. He still
Mhm.
has to develop.
Mhm.
And so his ceiling is way higher, in my opinion, than all the quarterbacks. And that's the
Mhm.
reason why I would take a guy like him over all the other quarterbacks. And so saying that, I think Bo Nix, this is a perfect draft for him. Perfect
Mhm.
opportunity because I honestly think there's not a huge separation between a Penix and a Bo Nix, or a
Mhm.
Jaden or a Williams, Caleb Williams and a Bo Nix
Mhm.
at this next level. And that's just my personal opinion. Bo Nix he's mobile. I mean, Caleb Williams is mobile.
Mhm.
We like there's just a lot of unknowns that doesn't really jump out saying, "Oh, the potential and the ceiling, they're all the same to me for those guys."
It's like they all have the skills to be really good, and it's just gonna be a matter of how we see it every year, where these guys end up. And I was thinking about this over the weekend. I'd argue that, it may not be what fans want. It's definitely not what I want as a media member because clicks matter. But
Mhm.
I think it'd arguably be better the further down the draft Bo falls. As long as it's like not third round, if he gets somewhere in the top 2 rounds, I think
Yeah.
it may be more advantageous to him, the further he falls, because then he can go into one of those, stable organizations, one of those ready-made things where he's not asked to, it's not like he's going to Atlanta where he's being asked to
Yeah.
be the savior from day one.
Do
That's a
not want
recipe for disaster, even
that.
for anyone. I mean,
Yeah.
Caleb Williams could go into Atlanta. He's one of the better prospects we've had in a long time. That's going to be really tough for him to turn that ship around. So,
Yeah.
I think that if Bo can fall to late in the first round, maybe even early second round, have it so where he doesn't have the weight of the world on his shoulders. It's not what fans want. It's not what I want. I want the clicks that come from Bo Nix, third quarterback off the board, top 10 pick. That's great. Fans love that. But if you
Mhm.
want long-term success in his career, I think
Yeah.
that it's okay that he's not one of those top quarterbacks because he's probably going to end up in a really good situation.
Yeah, kinda like what you were saying, like, the LA Rams, for instance, right? Like,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, I remember you saying that would be a good location and spot for him, and I agree.
Hmm. Oh, and it's like as much as I want him to go to the Broncos at number 12, and thank God they are getting rid of Russell Wilson. I celebrated very happily
Eh,
yesterday when that news came out. I
oh,
don't want him to go to Denver because like he's gonna be put way too much pressure on.
disclosure here, folks, Zach is a Denver Bronco
Oh
fan.
yeah, they know. If
So
listeners know.
pray for him, send positive encouragement to him because they are gonna be garbage.
Oh yeah, we'll see what Bryce Young does over there in Carolina, huh?
Hey, man, we'll see what we do. All I know is we got a quarterback.
Yeah, that's very true. That's all you need right now. I don't know how long you'll have him for, or how big of a quarterback he really is, but we'll see what you got.
Hey, man, we'll see.
All right, the next appetizer. What is your interest level in the EA Sports College Football 25 video game coming out this summer? I realize we haven't really talked about it, but this is exciting
Yeah.
news for anyone who grew up with the game. What is that? What's your interest level in?
EA Sports. It's in the game. Are you in the game? I hope to be in the
Uh,
game.
that was my next question. Like, we're gonna talk
Oh,
about Arch Manning opting out and everything, but like, there's an expectation that there's like a Legends mode in this game, and I
mm.
would assume, as one of the most famous and productive Oregon running backs, you would probably be one of the selected Oregon Legends. Have you heard from EA Sports? Do you expect to be in this game?
I don't, because if you think about it in the terms of collegiate level, you know, legends, you
Uh-huh.
have to go Michael James.
You
College
can have
Football
more
Hall of
than
Fame.
one, though. That's
Oh, you
true.
can have more, but I
I don't
mean, as
know.
far
Who's to say they can only have one Oregon running back from the past 20 years?
you're right, but I think obviously that would be uno or numero uno.
Numero uno. I was like, "What are you trying to say here?"
Uno. No, but I think definitely Michael James is going to be in the
Yeah.
legends mode. You got to have Michael James because he was a home run threat every time he touched a freaking ball. I mean,
Well, and you'll probably put DeAnthony Thomas too, just because his play style for a
yeah,
video game would be a
oh,
lot of fun.
would be nuts. Like, hey,
Yeah.
send a jet sweep. Okay.
Okay, that sounds fun. Kick returns all the time.
Yeah, I'd have him back there kick returning. I'd have Michael James back there kick returning too. Have him too deep.
So, the current news around this game, I mean, it came out yesterday, kind of in the news cycle today, is Texas backup QB Arch Manning, obviously the nephew of Peyton and Eli Manning. He's publicly declared that he's opting out of the game. He's saying no to the $600 NIL deal, and he won't have his name, image, and likeness as part of the game. What are your thoughts? What were your thoughts when you heard that?
Uh, I mean, it's actually smart if you think about it.
Okay,
He's taking the Michael Jordan approach, right? We didn't see
yeah,
Michael Jordan in any video games.
it's true.
Um, and I mean, he's not selling his name for $600. And one can argue that the Manning name carries a little bit more weight than a lot of these names.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it could be a leverage play because I mean, he's not playing this year either, right? He's not the
Mhm.
starter. So maybe it's something where, hey, look, when I do start, you're gonna have to come with some money. I
Yeah.
mean, listen, NCAA that they better put some policies in play with this NIL stuff because it can get out of hand. You're gonna have a bunch of people on the NCAA EA Sports game nameless
Yeah.
and no
You could.
likeness. Like, nope, I don't want you to have me on the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's more so of a leverage play.
So you were in the Madden games for what, a decade? What was that like? Did you play it a lot? Did you ever play as yourself? What was it like when
Oh
you
yeah.
saw other people playing as yourself?
Yeah, man, it was cool, getting, messages from people, talking to people saying, "Oh man, I use you all the time on Madden," or "I used to use you all the time when you were on NCAA, and Dennis Dixon and all the likes and whatnot." So it's always a good feeling because you're growing up playing video games, you're imagining, envisioning yourself playing the game.
Mhm.
You even create yourself sometimes and
Literally created.
load yourself up with all 99s and make yourself all buff and bulky and spat tape and the dark visor with the
Yep.
wristbands all over the place.
You're
So
just you're describing Zach Neel, QB number 4 right now.
of course, man, like no question about it. And my college when before I got to Oregon, my team was Florida State. I would basically recreate myself as Peter Warwick.
Hmm,
And so, and put myself everywhere: kick return, punt return, receiver, quarterback, safety. Um, it was, so those memories and the feeling when you get to the league, knowing that people are basically envisioning themselves through you, is pretty awesome because, and also too, what's cool about the video games, I do this with my daughter. She has this iPad and she's gotten into soccer. And I basically downloaded this video game on the iPad and it's very easy. It's like you touch a spot and they kick the ball. It's
mhm,
very elementary. But what it does is it gives her an understanding of what soccer is all about.
mhm.
What is the objective? What am I trying to do? You're trying to score the goal, and this is what you should do. So you're watching this video game create character basically kicking the ball towards the goal, and then another person comes up and kicks it, all because you just tapped the screen, but you're watching what's happening.
Mhm.
Right? So you're creating an awareness of the game for the game. And that's what, NCAA and Madden does. It gives, the athlete this vision of what things are supposed to look like and gives you the confidence to try certain things in
Yeah.
practice and in the game.
Yeah, and when I was playing back in high school, our coach used to give us our homework. It's like, all right, you need to go home and play an hour of Madden so you can
Right.
kind of figure out this play style and just learn these coverages and stuff like that. So I agree, it's a really cool tool that way.
Mhm.
Um, the last bit of news we have before we bring Jeff on, I specifically kept you in the dark about this one because I want your honest reaction. Earlier today, The Athletic released their top 25 rankings for coaches in college football. Both Bruce Feldman and Stewart Mandel, two reporters who I have a lot of respect for, they ranked their 25 best coaches in the nation. Jay Stu, where do you think Dan Lanning was ranked if you had to guess? Where would you rank him and where do you think they ranked him?
In the
In
nation
the nation, top 25 in the nation, where was Dan Lanning ranked, do you think?
as a head coach.
Correct.
uh, hey, all right. Georgia's coach is number one.
That's true. He was number one on both polls.
I'll say number 8.
Okay. You think he's the number 8 best coach? You think he's around there? I will tell you that one of the polls had Dan Lanning at number 25. The other
Oh,
poll did not have Dan Lanning ranked and did not even have him in the honorable mentions. Am I crazy for thinking that he's getting a little bit underrated right now?
there has to be time.
I
This
think it
is what
is.
it has to be time because if we're actually talking about him being a good coach and what he's been able to bring to the University of Oregon and the national spotlight and any pressure that comes with that. And I mean, let's be honest, going to the Big Ten, Oregon going to the Big Ten is great for the Big Ten, how I see it at this
Mhm.
point. Because the only thing you're going to be able to talk about is Ohio State. And so, good thing the University of Oregon's there because it kind of spices things up out the gate.
Mhm.
And it's because of Dan Lanning. It's okay. I like that. I like that he's not ranked like that.
Okay.
I'm glad he's number 25. Dan,
Chip on the
the number
shoulder.
the chip on your shoulder and let that pass down to the rest of the locker room and go into next year and you just go and prove everybody why you number 1. Period. Point blank.
It's kind of hard to approach this without a biased take for us. I mean, you as a former alumni of the team, me as well, I went to the school as well, but I cover them as a reporter. It feels like when talking about Dan, the ceiling is so high, but it is hard to argue against the fact that, there is such a small sample side and, the on-field product has not been perfect so far. I mean, he's been great, but then their recruiting is at a high level, but he does have no conference championships in his 2 years. He's 0-3 against the best team he has played. It feels like we could be a year away, a signature win away, or a conference championship for Oregon away from him being in that top 10. I really
Yeah.
agree with you that I think his experience is the only thing keeping him out of that.
Who's in that top 25 that who's in that top 10? Who
I don't
who's on
have
that
the
top
top
10
10 in
list?
front of me, but some of the notable names that were ranked ahead of Lanning: Mark Stoops at Kentucky, Willie Fritz at Houston, Dave Clawson at Wake Forest,
Okay,
Jamie
so these guys
Chadwell at Liberty.
these guys were probably not even ranked year like last year.
I don't have it pulled up. I closed that tab before the podcast, but there was some it's like Hugh Freeze at Auburn, Rich Rodriguez at Jacksonville State. These are all guys ranked ahead of Dan Lanning at the moment.
Yeah. Well, my non-biased opinion is that's crazy. That's crazy talk, and that's you know Dan Lanning in 2 years has been doing crazy work. So
Yeah,
keep it up. And rankings are just rankings. It doesn't matter. At the end of the
absolutely.
day, what matters is winning these football games, and I feel like that's what Oregon is primed and ready to do next year. Dylan Gabriel, I mean, he's being talked about as the top quarterback in the nation.
Hmm.
So we'll see. No pressure.
Yeah, rankings are made to get people to talk about them, and that's exactly what they did here. With
Yeah.
that being said, enough with the appetizers. Excuse me. With that being said, enough with the appetizers. Let's bring on the main course and talk to Geoff Schwartz. Okay, happy day for us. We've got Geoff Schwartz on the podcast, a perfect person to chat with today because he knows the Oregon Ducks like the back of his hand and is also very tuned in to the NFL with the NFL draft as well. Jeff, how are you, man?
I'm good. It's a fun time of year. It's starting to warm up a little bit. We're getting used to thinking about football again. Now the Super Bowl's over with all the draft and combine stuff. It's a fun year. And I saw today some spring practice happening. Chip Kelly over at Ohio State today. I mean, we got like a full thing back. It's back. It's all back.
Yeah, we got Oregon spring practice starting next week. I can't wait for that.
Next week already?
Yeah, it's starting next pro day next Tuesday, first practice next Thursday.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. It's happening.
Fast. Jeez.
It's happening.
So you and Jay Stu obviously know each other well. You guys not only teammates at Oregon, you teammates at Carolina, which I actually learned when doing research for this podcast. So what was that like? I mean, we know Jay Stu is the co-host of this podcast. What do we need to know about Jay Stu?
He's allergic to shrimp or seafood. Is it seafood?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, please. Hey, listen. Hey, everyone pause. Everyone pause listening to this and sit down somewhere and listen to this story. I will start this off. Rookie year, 2008.
Yeah. Okay.
First away game.
Yep.
Regular season. San Diego Chargers.
Yep.
Flight from Carolina all the way to San Diego. My sitting partner on the plane is Geoff Schwartz. Take the floor, Geoff.
So they don't travel practice squad players very often in the NFL. But John Fox thought it was a reward for the regular, for training camp. When you fly typically to coast, at least it's the way it's been. Sometimes you go an extra day early. So I think we went a day early even, like on Friday. So it was a reward for the practice squad players getting through camp was to go on the trip. Plus we had to practice Friday, I think, when we landed. So part of that was all sort of, so I'm sitting next to Stu and, the plane is dark, right? And we get a meal. And Jay Stu's like, yeah, I'll take the meal. And I don't think we even knew what it was.
So I was asleep before.
Yeah. He sleeps. He's a plane sleeper. He sleeps like the entire plane. Right? I can never sleep on the plane. So he wakes up at some point and starts eating this meal. And again, pitch black, like it's dark, okay, in the plane. No lights are on. And at some point I look over and he's like Hitch. His face is swelling up. All right. So I go I go find our trainer and doctor. I'm like, yo, man, you gotta check this. He's having a moment right now. And they have medicine on board, the Benadryl and whatnot. Come to find out, he's allergic to shellfish, and it was a shrimp pasta, and he just ate it. He ate the whole thing without even knowing it was shrimp. I guess maybe you never had it before, so you just ate it. I for some reason. And we had an allergic reaction on the plane, like a full now my daughter is allergic to shellfish. And she doesn't have quite that reaction yet. I mean, we haven't given her shellfish in a long time. She actually sometimes gets like hives just going in the ocean. If it's a very kind of like shellfishy ocean, to put it in a way. But we have an EpiPen ready to go and everything. I just think about with you, just how the EpiPen would have saved your life.
Oh, it would. I mean, it did save my life. It did save my life. So
they gave it to you. Yeah.
They gave it to me. They created one luckily we travel with our athletic trainers and our team doctors. I was eating this pasta. It was macaroni and cheese and shrimp pasta, I believe. And once I noticed the shell, it was because I was thinking to myself while I was eating the pasta, I was like, oh man, this pasta, they didn't cook this all the way. It's really hard. It's really hard. Like, man, they need to do better with this. And then I actually looked at it and I was like, oh, that's a shrimp tail. And then even more so, my body just went.
Yeah.
And then they stuck me with an EpiPen, and then I woke up, when we landed, and I was in the front of the plane sitting next to Musa Muhammad. And then that same day, I went to go practice. Had a wonderful practice. Okay. almost died, and I went to practice.
Do you remember, by the way, who caught the game-winning pass in that game?
Dante Rosario
did. Former Duck as well.
That's one of the games that I remember very thoroughly. I don't remember a lot of games thoroughly.
You played a lot.
That one, I remember that one very much. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how we started our journey together at the Panthers, was Jonathan Stewart almost dying from a shellfish allergy.
Well, that's a great way to start off this podcast. I love it. We're going to talk a lot about the combine today, but I'm curious, what was it like going through the combine with a college teammate of yours? Do you guys see each other a lot in different position groups? Do you guys hang out outside of the field or on the field? What's it like?
we're different times, right? They go through.
Yeah,
So like you have like a 4-day block or 3-day block, but it's depending on position. So like in this year, they moved the offensive line to the end. We used to be at the beginning, I think. So like we're separated by our schedule. So one day he might be doing medical, I'm doing interviews. Like we're separated. Here's like, so it's funny when you look back on the combine now that you're out of it, and you realize like how you were valued as a prospect. You can tell at the combine. You don't know this till you like afterwards. So for example, you know they have these specific team interviews. You get 15 minutes in a room with the team, and these are the very famous ones, right? Where you hear like ask weird questions. So I only had one of those. I had one. My brother had 12. All right, he was a second round pick, and I was a 7th round pick. Like now looking back on it, you realize like, oh yeah, you know, like maybe there were signs I wasn't as good as I thought I was, or I'd be drafted much lower. And the honest thing to me about the combine is just the workout day, how quiet it is in that building. Now they have some fans now. When we went through it, it was at the RCA Dome, and it was just it's just sterile. It's dead quiet in there. It's a very weird atmosphere to have this like job interview where you play all your games in front of fans, and then you go and you just run in a quiet 70,000 seat stadium with
very stoic
300 people there. And so it's a very, and now of course now they have fans and whatnot. It's more, and it was funny this year I saw guys on their phone after the 40 time, like looking up the time. I mean, we had none of that. We weren't told what our time was. You just went through the process and found out afterwards.
Do you remember what you ran, Geoff?
I think a 5.39, 5.4. It wasn't very fast.
No, you ran a 4.93.
Yeah, yeah. I had a good 10. That's my claim to fame. That's what I tell you. I had a good. I mean, heck, look. No offense to Troy Franklin, but like we almost had the same 10 splits. Until we.
Hey,
no.
Hey, that mattered. That mattered big time on your carry against USC.
It did matter. No, so look, this is about the combine, right? Like different things for different positions matter a lot. I'm not worried about a wide receiver's 10-yard split. I'm worried about offensive lineman's 10-yard split. I'm worried about the broad jump and the vertical for offensive linemen. I'm not so worried about top end speed or the shuttle's good and 3-cone. They're all translatable a little bit, but I want to see a couple of things. And so the 40 time is fun to watch for offensive linemen, but I was watching all day Sunday. Look, my confession with the combine, it's a little boring. Like we can admit it. It's not like the most fun to watch. I think highlights are fun to watch. I think some of the activities are like when the quarterbacks actually throw, it's fun to watch some of the throws. But again, you're working with guys you've never thrown with before. It's a weird atmosphere. I mean, look, Joe Milton throwing the ball 70 yards was great to see. That means nothing to me, but some of it can be entertaining.
Yeah, Geoff, what's your take on the offensive line drills? Do you, as a coach or a scout, go into the combine looking at those drills where they're going over the bags, doing the backpedaling, laying on their back, getting up, and responding to directions? Are those drills tangible to evaluation?
I think they are. And here's a buddy of mine talked to an offensive line coach that was there and a veteran offensive line coach. And when you've seen it for so many years, I think you know what to expect in the drills. And when there's a guy that does the drill better than someone else, that's a plus, right? Like you watch, and a lot of times it's the first time these coaches have seen the players in person. They're not going to the Senior Bowl. They're not going to the East-West Shrine game. There are some coaches there that coach the game, but a random offensive line coach is not going to Mobile. This is the first time you have your eyes on any of these offensive linemen. And so when you watch them move in a drill, the veteran guys can see, oh, guy got his feet work well. He's got good hips, good explosion, good movement skills. And it's very obvious, I think, when the opposite is true, when guys are struggling in the drill. So it's a small, if you have 100 plot points to draft someone, it's a small half a plot point to watch them work out. But for a lot of the coaches, that's what the purpose is for them. They just want to see the guys move with their own eyes. Now, they will go work them out again at pro days if they like them and whatnot. But this is the first time any of these guys have watched them in person. That's a big part of scouting. You want to see players in person, how they move, how they look. And that to me is the importance of the drills. Not so much of like, oh, this guy looked like he could pull well. Well, look, it's on air. I hope they can pull well. Jackson Powers Johnson pancaking a defender, like he does it on film. I don't need to see him do it in this drill. No, he can do that. But again, like the movement skills of a guy like that, just seeing him in person move can really sway an offensive line coach.
Yeah.
So just as an overview, Geoff, this is a non-Oregon specific question, but are there people that, really stood out to you the most? And I mean, not named Xavier Worthy at this point for his 4.21.
The thing about that is, like, if he ran a 4.24, he's not drafted any differently.
No, he shouldn't be.
Like, it's super cool that he ran fast and records are broken. I don't know if anyone stood out. I mean, look, there's some offensive linemen that guys liked. There's some guys on defense that looked fluid. But okay, I'll give you an example. Like, I think Jared Verse, the kid from Florida State, I mean, his numbers are incredible. Here's why the numbers are important. It's just good to comp. You have years and years of data now. You're just comping. Okay, here's what Verse looked like versus someone else who's an All-Pro or Pro Bowl guy. It's just comping numbers. Doesn't mean they're going to be great, but a guy like that, you're like, holy heck! Like, those numbers look like all pros in the NFL, and look at his size and height and weight, and look how fast he ran. Like, he stood out as a guy in day one. I think it was the first day defensive lineman ran that stood out to me as a good player. But again, I mean, I go back to the film, right? The film is what matters here for a lot of these guys. It's just checking boxes at the combine, and but his stood out to me.
Yeah, I would say the kid from Troy, the running back Kimani Vidal. Because on film, it didn't look like he was that fast. So for me, from a running back vantage point, you can earn a little bit more respect of validation and confirmation as far as playmaking ability.
Yeah.
As far as, can he take it the distance? So a guy that can run a 4.4 compared to a guy that's running a 4.6, that's a huge drop off. So on film, if you're playing fast and you're like, man, he's breaking tackles, but it doesn't look like he's moving all that fast. Is it the competition, or are these guys faster than him, or what is it? So you see a guy that's, putting up 4.4 numbers. It's like, okay, well, he has the ability to take it to the next gear.
What about the opposite with Audric Estime that didn't run fast and they're back, but on film he plays fast? Like, I don't. That's, I think, the hardest one to deal with, right? It's like a guy that, like, the Coleman, the wide receiver from Florida State, who didn't run fast, but then the GPS tracker had him as the fastest wide receiver in the drills.
And that's exactly why the combine is up and down, right? You don't really have the answer in this product on the field. Yeah. It just helps you validate what you already know about these players. And so for me, watching, Florida State receiver go through a gauntlet drill, catching everything straight on a straight line, running at a tempoed speed that's relative to game speed, I like that. That's giving me the thumbs up on, this guy can translate what he does athletically to the game of football. Whereas I think you talk about Troy Franklin, right? Troy Franklin ran a 4.41.
Yeah.
And then they showed the gauntlet drill of him kind of weaving in and out.
A little bit, yeah.
And what that really shows me is, he drifts away from the ball when he catches it. And so that's a problem, because when you're going against a defensive back that is a lockdown corner, such as like Sauce Garner, somebody like that, those are elements where a DB is going to be chomping at the bits to just undercut you on a route.
Yeah.
Because if you're drifting away, coaches hate that. So if I'm Troy Franklin, I need to work on, when I'm running my route to cross the middle of the field and that ball's thrown, I am not drifting. I'm going up there and I'm plucking it out of the air. That's what Steve Smith used to always say this. Pluck it out of the air. Don't let it come to you. Just go grab it. And he's one of the best. He was one of the best to ever do that. So it's interesting, man. Like, you can take, and you got to pick and choose what you see at the combines. So
let's get Oregon specific here. Which guys? I'll go to both of you. I'll start with you, Geoff. Which guys do you think had the best week overall?
Probably Jackson Powers.
Okay.
I will say that Brandon Dorlus had an exceptional 40 time. I think he was the second fastest defensive lineman, which at his weight, being sort of like a tweener-ish, where he might be a 3 technique, maybe he's a 4-eye and a 3-down alignment. I thought that was pretty good for him as well. He wasn't talked about quite the same as other guys, obviously, with some of the guys testing, but I feel like Jackson Powers Johnson, I think, is just going to be a first-round pick. Like, he's locked in a first-round pick, and he did everything well that you sort of have to do to be that player in the first round.
Stu, what about you?
I say JPJ. I mean, everything that I think more so, like as I was saying earlier, like when you go into these combines as a coach or as a scout, you're actually learning more about the person than the player.
Yep.
And I feel like I learned more about JPJ during the combine than I did, like for the whole season of Oregon football, like all the seasons that he's played. I learned that he sang in the gospel choir. I love that. Like it's showing me his personality. It's showing me, what he can relate to. He can relate to anyone. Anyone that's singing in the gospel choir. that's a different type of cat. You know what I'm saying? So, which he's smart. His one of the things that I would one knock that I have is maybe this is something you can help us out with, Geoff. But he seems like he's very upright all the time, and I know you kind of want to be in an athletic, upright position to punch and do all those things, but when you're coming off the ball, like you're just like, it seems like he's just very exposed, right, with his chest. And so, like, what do you see there?
Yeah, he's so powerful, though, it hasn't been much of a problem. Now, to be fair, he's really played no one that could give him any problems. I mean, maybe 91 on Washington was about the only guy they played this season, I think, that is any pro defensive lineman inside, I think, of the Pac-12. There's just not a lot of those guys off the top of my head I can think of. They didn't play UCLA this year, and that defensive line was fabulous. So, yeah, I can see that being a problem a little bit, just kind of working on his bend in his hips and knees. But, dude, talking to a lot of people, I've watched a film on him as well. Like, there's not a lot of weaknesses. Like, there's not a lot on film where you're like, man, he has a couple plays a game where he just sort of spazzes out and does something weird. But other than that, like, I think that your point about playing a little bit upright, but I can look at a guy like Creed Humphrey on the Chiefs. He's sort of the same build, big barrel chest. Creed's a little taller. He's 6'5", I think he is. But again, it's just a leverage point. Like, how do you use your hips? How do you use your hands? The kid from Notre Dame is 6'5" and 6'8.5". John Alt, you don't see that being a problem in his game. I don't know what's going to be JPJ. Like I maybe some of the movement stuff I could see in zone offense being a little bit of a concern. They just didn't do that much at Oregon. When they did, it was fine. He was good at it. As being maybe a weakness. I don't know if a zone teams feels like they want to draft him, one of those outside zone Shanahan teams, but he also played guard too. Like I think that's a big plus for him.
Yeah.
Stu, I've got one for you. What did you kind of make of Bucky Irving and what he did? I feel like a lot of people were a little bit disappointed, I guess is the word you'd use, because his 40 was a little bit slower than we thought. If you watched Oregon football, he's not a straight line runner. It's not his 40 speed that's going to get you. It's his 10-yard split with speed was pretty impressive. So what'd you kind of make of him this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously we would want to see Bucky Irving, especially with his size, not the biggest back. You would want to see a guy like that that's, could showcase his skill level, on a third down feature type back, put him in space and make some guys miss. He does that though. So like, again, the 40 time isn't make or break. I think you already know what type of player he is going to be, locked in at, the type, the skill set that he does have. I will say, watching him on film, there was multiple opportunities for him to bounce outside. And I know as a runner, it's great to get downhill. North and south runners, I love you. That's kind of how I'm built. Like, get north and south and let everything else take care of itself. If you want to get outside, throw a screen or something. But there's multiple times where I think if he would have actually challenged to get outside, he would have had way more explosive plays. And I wonder if it's because of his lack of confidence and speed sometimes. And so that's the only downside I have there. Obviously his size, for third down, blocking, that can always be an issue and something that he might have to just work at.
I have a question about him as a runner too, because when I watched him, he was not great at times of running where the intended hole was at. Jay Stu, like he kind of now sometimes it was a home run. It was a Cal game where he hit the backside A gap on that board, but a lot of times it was like not good. How do you evaluate that on film?
You got to be slow to, fast through. You know what I'm saying? So as a runner, you have to be patient. You have to press the hole. When you say press the hole, that means you got to press it to where the linebackers are screaming across the, the face of, your lead blocker or your guard or whoever, the point of emphasis is on the run play. You press the hole before you cut back. And a lot of times he was he jumped the gun or he missed it. And at the college level, you can miss a hole and get back to it.
Yeah.
Especially if you're quick like him, right? At the next level, if you miss a hole, it's a wrap. You know what I'm saying? So you got to make sure you press, and make sure you know for certain that hole that's intended for you, that door is, if it's closed, that's when you cut back or that's when you bounce. But you press the hole because eventually it should and it will open up.
Let's get into some of the superlatives that I brought you guys here to talk about. I gave you both a list of superlatives for Oregon players in the draft class last week. We're just going to try and see if we can project some of the futures for these guys at the next level. You ready to go?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right, let's start with this one. I've got the player most likely to be a year one Pro Bowler. Who do you guys think that is? Jeff, start with you.
Probably JPJ is my guess.
Okay.
That just it's hard with one person. Again, it's not like a position with multiple guys, but I think that'll be the one.
J Stu?
JPJ.
Yep.
You had JPJ as well. Okay.
Yeah.
I honestly, I had JPJ written down, but I think it could be Troy Franklin. I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago, J Stu. If he lands in the right spot, if Troy goes to Kansas City or Miami, somewhere where they've got a passing offense and he can kind of just plug in and be one of those deep threat guys, I could see him being there because, KC, they don't really have many other guys to go to, but we'll see if I think he has to end up in the right spot for that to happen.
Yeah.
All right, player most likely to win a Super Bowl ring first.
Well, I it's probably Troy Franklin if the Chiefs draft him. Is my guess. I will just say again, I know we're a Ducks podcast and we should always be sort of like pumping up the Ducks guys, but the thing with Franklin to me, like I'm a Chiefs fan. I don't want him to be drafted by the Chiefs because they need a guy that is 6'2", 205. They need a big possession wide receiver. And I think Franklin struggled a lot in that role this year at times. Like Muhammad on the Huskies locked him up pretty well in that Pac-12 championship game. Like I'm worried about the physicality of Troy Franklin. If you go to an offense where you're number 2 and you're not sort of needed to be that big possession guy, then, I was debating with someone today. They're like, the Eagles have Devontae Smith. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not talking about his weight. I go, I'd rather have A.J. Brown than the Chiefs. Like they need A.J. Brown. They don't need Devontae Smith. And to me, like Franklin might be drafted by them, but I don't like that fit because that's not what they need. They have Rashid Rice. They have that guy already. They need 6'2", 205, 210, 6'3", 210. Like they need big wide receiver. And I'm not sure Franklin's that guy, but he might be drafted by them. So I'll have him as a Super Bowl first.
Well, his size was a little bit surprising at the combine too. What did he measure in? It was like 6'2", 180, something like that.
It was like 176.
176, yeah, 78.
That's small for the receiver that he wants to be at the next level.
Yeah, he got to go ahead and start packing some lunch this offseason.
I know, jeez.
J Stu, who you got?
Super Bowl ring.
First one.
Man, I had Troy Franklin.
Okay.
And basically from the standpoint of where he would get drafted would be to a good team, most likely, and hopefully a good team that already has passing game in place. You just plug him in. Miami Dolphins scream loud in the ear of that option because you already have speed, and you're just adding another guy that has speed and a frame. You know what I'm saying? So, but hopefully he's working on getting that weight up.
Yeah, that makes 3 of us. I had Franklin as well because he seems like someone that, whatever team drafts him, they're not, like Jeff said, they're not looking for their wide receiver one that's going to take over and be the centerfold of their offense. They're looking for a cherry on top, a speed threat. So I think he's likely going to end up in a pretty good situation. Player most likely to be a Hall of Famer.
JPJ.
I mean, that's probably the easy one, but I'll just say this: like, wouldn't the easiest one to be Bo Nix? Like quarterback, It feels like at that position, there's like per capita more of those guys. There's only one on a team. I'm looking right now. There's 24 running backs / quarterbacks in the Hall of Fame, and there's 26 other quarterbacks. Like you only have 29. You only have 29 wide receivers in the Hall of Fame. Only 9 tight ends. Well, you actually have more than that. They count you tight ends. You only have 48 offensive linemen ever. So I think that probably, I'm not saying Bo Nix is going to be Hall of Famer, but just like if he is good, that's the position I think that will most likely generate a Hall of Fame. JPJ is great. But you get like one center a generation.
That's a great point.
At the most, one center a generation in the Hall of Fame. So is he that guy who's going to be the Hall of Famer? That's hard. That's hard to predict.
Yeah, that's a great point.
That is a very good point.
So we're all in favor of Bo Nix. Bo Nix, you're going to be a Hall of Famer, dog.
I would like to put the social media breakout. Geoff Schwartz says Bo Nix will be a Hall of Famer. Can I get your sign of approval on that?
I would appreciate the entire segment being clipped, not just one thing.
All right, we can do that for you. All right, player most likely to have a 10-year career.
I'm going to forego the obvious ones. Obviously, I think Kyrie Jackson. If you're a lockdown corner, man, you play forever. You know, you just do. And I didn't see what his testing was, but his size, man, and the way they use him this year in man coverage,
6'4",
like you can play forever. Well, now the thing about man cover corners, eventually you do lose a step, and you got to kind of transition to either inside to safety, which he's a little small for, just size wise bulk. But like, I think for me, he's the guy. Like you put him in a team, and you never can have enough corners. He'll play a long time.
What about you, Jay?
I'm gonna take the route of Troy Franklin.
Okay.
10-year career. You know, the way he plays, if he's avoiding contact, like he's avoiding these passes and drifting the way he was, then he should be okay. I feel like receivers have the opportunity to have long careers. So if he does, the right things, continues to get better, obviously, gets drafted to the right spot to showcase his skill and his talent. And again, just work on the drifting. It's not good because you won't be on a team if you're drifting.
Yeah, I took the low hanging fruit. I said JPJ, but I really like your answer, Geoff, about Kyrie. I think that he has the ability to really impress the next level. He's got the size, he's got the speed. I know that his jumping numbers at the combine were really impressive. I forget what they were off the top of my head, but I know that he had some really good measurables. So I'm excited to see what he can do. He also could probably stand to add a few pounds at the next level as well.
Yeah.
All right, we've got 2 more here, 2 fun ones. Player most likely to be a fantasy football star.
Probably it has to be Bucky Irving, right? Like that's the guy.
I think it kind of has to, right?
It has to be. Yeah, it feels like the guy that has to be. I could see him. Goes to a team. He's the third down back and just gets a bunch of receptions and like touchdowns where he's not the primary guy, but is a guy like
a Jerick McKinnon.
Yeah, like you have a guy who's like your third on your fantasy football roster. You just sort of have him in and out of the lineup. Because I mean, look, easy Bo Nix, but he's not. Franklin maybe, but I think Bucky Irving is that guy.
Yeah. Sounds like a frustrating fantasy football player if you never know when to start and when to sit him.
I mean, that's a Jared McKinnon life, right? You just like
exactly.
But the days you play him and he gets you 20 points, you're freaking pumped about it.
That's very true. You have anything else, Jace, too?
Nah, Bucky Irving was the right call there. Running backs getting yards, in the receiving realm there, catches, yards, just different ways for him to score on the points.
All right, let's go to this last one. Player most likely to be an undrafted star.
I mean, the most ironic one would be Cam Lewis, right? Just like it becomes like
he was my answer.
Just becomes like the best kicker of all time. After he kind of got the yips,
Wouldn't that be frustrating?
Yips this season. Kickers are frustrating, right? You love them and you hate them, and I just want to say he's going to be drafted. I think Brandon Doyle is going to be really good in the NFL. I think what we saw last year with him and his ability to use his hands last year. I mean, there's a rep. Fuaga, the Oregon State right tackle, is supposed to be a top 10 pick. Dorlus beat him like immediately early in that game. And Dorlus is not a defensive end. I think his ability to just the improvement from last year to this past season with his hand usage and just overall knowledge of the game. I think he'll be drafted, of course. So it's not going to count, but I just think we haven't talked about him enough. I think he's going to be a really good NFL player. And that position, that 3-technique pass rusher, is so valuable to so many teams now. I think he'll be a good one in the NFL. But Cam Lewis to me would be the funniest one of all, right? Just like just had some yips this year, but ends up being really good.
That's the one that would get the most group texts in Eugene, just fired up to see on Sundays. Like, what the hell? He's making field goals now?
There was that clip of him hitting like a 60-yard field goal that went around like a month ago.
He won the kicker combine. Whatever the kicker combine is, he was named the MVP.
We're like, sure, whatever you say.
Stu, what do you have?
I actually had Camden Lewis as well.
We all had Camden Lewis then. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm also very curious to see what position Jamal Hill plays at the next level. He moved from safety to linebacker at Oregon. He's a big safety, small linebacker. I'm curious to see what type of NFL career he has.
Yeah, because I feel like when we played Georgia this past season.
21, yeah.
Yeah, 21.
Wait, no, 22, sorry.
22, yes.
22, yeah. He had a pretty good game, from what I recall, just as far as the announcers calling his name, or like I remember actually like we haven't or who was the receiver?
Lad McConkey.
Yes, that guy. And so number 84, right?
He was. Yeah. I think he was 84. I don't think he was 84 last year, but yeah, Lad McConkey.
We played him, yes.
Yeah.
When we played him, he was 84.
Yeah.
But I just remember like the announcers kind of like, saying this guy's name. I'm like, oh, okay. He's over there doing his thing. He's locking him down. He's doing what he's supposed to do. And then I actually saw like somebody wrote an article as far as like the PFF, the rankings and all that kind of stuff. That was his highest rated game. And so it's interesting because I think what we're seeing more on defense is the need for coverage. How long can you cover a guy for?
Especially in Oregon's defense, especially with all the pressure they bring.
Yeah, because and especially because you have mobile quarterbacks. What are you supposed to do to really get these guys off of their spot? You got to send pressures, and so when you send pressures, you got to have guys that can cover. You got to and you have to have some one-on-ones and guys that can lock guys up and understand, zone coverage and how to disguise things. If he can, find the right system, the ceiling can be high for him as well. I mean, I'll say for myself in this draft, like going through a combine experience and having my injuries, getting drafted to the Carolina Panthers was the best thing that could possibly ever happen. Because I can honestly say if I got drafted somewhere else with my situation, I couldn't tell you that I would have the career that I had. I wouldn't tell you that the longevity piece would be something that I would have had because my injury situation was governed by a training staff that did surgery on me, basically. Dr. Anderson did my toe surgery.
Yeah.
And he was our team doctor. And so like everything that was supposed to happen for me happened. And we call that God's grace. But yeah, man, like I think for, all these players, wherever they're drafted, good luck. Because that's really the tale of. I mean, there's only a few players in history that go to a place and just say, "Hey, look, no matter what the situation is, I was made to be, a Hall of Famer of some sort." So.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's get you out of here, Geoff. Real quick before you go, what are you most looking forward to seeing for the Ducks when spring football starts next week? Are there any, single players that you're most intrigued by, single, just aspects of the team?
I mean, to me, it's Dylan Gabriel, right? And Evan Stewart,
Mhm.
like those two guys, that connection. Obviously, Franklin's gone. They need that. No, Tez is good, but he's not a number one, I'd say, right? Like he's really in his role in the slot. Gabriel's a different quarterback than Bo Nix. You're probably not going to get all the deep throws, but I think the intermediate and sort of that's where Gabriel's going to live. He runs the ball a little bit more than Nix. Obviously, last year they told Nix to pull that back a little bit. So I'm curious. I'm curious about Gabriel. I think everyone is, right? I mean, everyone else is set. Offensive line set, tight end, wide receiver for the most part, running back room is set. Defensively, I think it's hard to tell in the spring. It's easy to tell quarterback, like quarterback. So to me, it's about Gabriel and what he can do and how that, how he gets ready for the season. And again, Evan Stewart, to me, his incredible abilities on the field will be nice to see on our field as well.
I'm not sure that we're going to see him in spring. I've been told he's still dealing with some of the injury stuff at Texas A&M. I hope we see him, but I'm not certain that we will see him this spring. So
now you're just ruining my take.
I know. I'm sorry. Well, we can't wait to see Dylan Gabriel.
just ruining my pick. It's hard to tell anyone else, right? Like it's hard to just see like guys on defense. I haven't even looked. I'm so far from recruiting day now. I mean, that was the real sign. It was December. I don't even remember who we signed. We
signed one person in February, and he's not even coming till 2026.
Yeah, and then all the transfer portal stuff. Muhammad's really good. Like I think people. Last comment here is like, it's very clear. If you look at like what Michigan did this year on defense, it takes we know this already, but it takes 3 corners. You need 3 because you have so much nickel. We have 3 corners now. Like we legit have 3 corners, and the ability to it feels like Washington. We tried to Washington proof our defense because the way they played offense and the way our defense just didn't mesh, right? Like we didn't have a third covered corner, essentially a third safety that could cover. Our safeties weren't the best in covering, and Washington put us in some bad situations last year. So it feels like Washington improved our defense. Now, obviously, different offense this season with Jed Fish, but like I like that they're like, look, we have a weakness. Let's go solve the weakness with better football players. And so I like that kind of the way they went about adding on defense.
Do you got anything else for Geoff before he gets out of here?
No, man. Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
You're good at your job, and
Thank you.
keep doing it, man. Keep blessing us with the facts and information about college level, the pros, everything, man. And we got to go golfing.
Yes, we do. I need one of those throwback jerseys in '74. If anyone's listening right now to I need '74 Kenny. You know my address.
Kenny's got to be listening.
Yeah.
Send that. Give that.
All right. Make sure you follow him, Geoff Schwartz, on Twitter. Listen to him on SiriusXM Radio. Listen to the Geoff Schwartz is Smarter Than You podcast. Geoff, thank you again for taking the time today, man.
Glad to be here. Thank you, guys.
All right, that was Geoff Schwartz. Awesome interview. I'm really happy to have him on. Stu, what do you think about that?
Man, it was great talking to Geoff. Share so many memories. I mean, if we actually had the time, we could probably do like 10 episodes of stories.
I feel like that shrimp story was the best part of the podcast. I wanted to do nothing but stories with you too.
I mean, that's really, and when you, as this, as we continue to do this podcast, and I'll start bringing in, more of my teammates from the past, and, it's going to be a good treat because, it's fun for me to be able to talk to, guys like Geoff and just kind of see where his brain has developed in this football world, from a retired guy, from a retired aspect of things. And so it's just good to hear, what he thinks about, evaluations, post-career and being at, the top, in being in the NFL at the top. And then being able to watch, at a level of these guys going through the combine and guys at the college level and evaluating talent, in the league. It's really, really cool to hear his perspective because he's been doing this for I guess 6 years now, 5 years. And so there's a lot of wisdom to be heard from guys like that. And so it's going to be fun to be able to tap in with other guys as we continue this thing out.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the stories. I love being able to ask a question and then just lay out for 10 minutes while you guys go back and forth and laughing and telling stories, sharing memories about you guys staying or playing
Yeah.
days together. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We will be on next week. Once again, next week. I think it will probably be, I don't know what our schedule is. It's different because we got the pro day on Tuesday and then spring football practice starts on Thursday. So we'll have a full spring football breakdown for you. Oregon starts on Thursday, the 14th, and they've got another practice on Saturday. So we're gonna talk to you a lot about, what this new look roster looks like, what we're expecting, what we're excited for, stuff like that. I'm very much looking forward to that. We started writing on Ducks Wired about like spring previews and position breakdowns, stuff like that. I can't wait for the season. I'm so ready for football to be back.
Oh yeah, have something to talk about and some real
Finally.
time events.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm looking forward to that. You can check out more of my work at duckswire.usatoday.com. Follow me at Zachary C. Neel on Twitter. You can follow Stu on Twitter at JonathanStewart1. Make sure to check out the Believe in Panthers podcast for myself, Zach Neel, for my co-host, Jonathan Stewart. We'll talk to you guys next week. Until then, take it easy.
See ya. Wouldn't want to be ya.